Welcome to the Freshman Seminar presentation, Thinking Critically. This presentation corresponds with Chapter 8, Thinking in College, in your step-by-step textbook. As we enter into this lesson, it helps to kind of think about why we are in college. And one of the major reasons that people traditionally go to college is to learn how to think. And that doesn't mean it's to get brainwashed or learn how to think like a certain type of person that only has narrow views. It means to learn to think critically, and that includes things like not taking things at face value. In other words, being able to dig deeper into things beyond what you see, checking into the facts, looking at various moral and ethical angles to serious decisions, looking at things from different perspectives and all angles, and then, of course, being open to ideas and being able to consider things whether or not you agree with them. We do want to learn more how to think critically. And again, this isn't just to show off that we have a great education. There are real life ramifications of learning to think critically. One is to become a more informed decision maker. And that means that you're not easily manipulated into purchasing things, and you want to be informed on what you're buying. A big thing is deciding on government officials, and if people are unable to think critically, they're easily manipulated by gimmicks. We've got a big problem in America if that's the case. So again, trying to help people learn how to think critically, regardless of their political party or social and moral values, is very important. And of course, we all have difficult decisions to make, and some of those are going to be personal, but many of those are going to include our careers. And one of the main things that employers tell us, both those of us at Ancilla College and those of us involved in education in a wider sense, when we talk with employers and we talk about people who are hiring for jobs, one of the big things that they tell us is they want people who can think critically and help make difficult decisions within the workplace, whatever that workplace. So what is critical thinking? Well, it's being able to evaluate information using logical and rational processes in to search for the truth. And this is important because many people, you can see some of them listed here, are always trying to sell you something. And that's not bad in and of itself, but we need to have the critical thinking to be able to be more discerning and to make wise decisions. Learning about critical thinking and the type of thinking that you're going to learn how to do in college also has to do with your relationship with authority. And the idea in going to college partly is to help develop leaders for both today and tomorrow, and to sort of differentiate yourself, or at least have that ability, if you so choose, to differentiate yourself from those around you. And there are a lot of people who just follow authority, and they don't question, they don't challenge authority. And again, nothing against that. We need those people. If all anyone ever did was rail against authority and try to be the leaders themselves, the world couldn't run correctly. So we do need those people. But at the same time, we want many people, even those who do follow authority, to be able to challenge them if needed, and to be able to question things and say, hey, this isn't right, or hey, you know what, I voted for you, and I thought we have the same principles, but the way that you're behaving or the things that you're saying are not factual, or this is not lining up with what you said you would do. We need to be able to challenge authority even if we're not going to be those leaders ourselves. And oftentimes people who just follow authority, and yeah, they may complain about it, but they don't really know how to think critically and challenge authority, those people often feel like they don't really have control over their own lives, and they tend to really not have any actual power. They may be the one to dominate conversations at family gatherings, and they may have strong personalities, but ultimately they don't really hold any power to affect any change. We, as people who are in college right now and learning to think critically, we want to be able to have some power and be able to challenge. Another aspect of critical thinking is being able to find the right answer. Sometimes in life things are very clear-cut, good versus bad, or good versus evil, black and white type of situations. Many aspects of life, as I'm sure you are learning, are not that easy. They're not that simple. And sometimes you have to determine the best answer based on the situation. Again, that's a big aspect of critical thinking. And you need to have the ability to challenge your own opinions because, again, life is constantly changing. We are constantly changing as people. And you need to be able to challenge yourself and challenge your own opinions on things in order to grow, in order to do the best thing in life. So as you begin to think about critical thinking, and as you start learning some of those skills in your classes, you'll start to look at situations and realize that many times there is more than one correct answer. You need to evaluate all the possible answers that maybe you start off with, but then other people blend in with their own answers, and you need to be able to kind of sort through and evaluate those, including challenging your own and being open to change. So you need to be able to ask questions and do research, be open to all viewpoints. You need to be able to draw conclusions. These are all skills that we learn in many of our classes, especially what we would call considered the humanities classes. So here are some ways you can begin to think critically and show off those critical thinking skills and develop them as time goes on. When you're asking questions, that's a big one. So you want to ask some questions. We have some sample ones here. First of all, saying, do I understand what they're presenting? Sometimes people say things and we don't quite understand it. We need to spend some time really researching it to understand it before we have a knee-jerk reaction. And then think about, well, do I agree with it? Why or why not? And could maybe I be interpreting it a different way than how it's meant? Or could different people around me be interpreting the situation or this material in more than one way? As we start to dig deeper and ask deeper questions, then we want to ask, can I trust this person that's making the claim? Now, I teach writing 1 as the person who's narrating and teaching this particular course. And this is a big one that I always ask students to focus on. Is this person credible? Can you really trust them? How do you know? No. Really good questions to ask. Digging into the evidence. Really, do I have enough evidence to make a good decision or to know what the right answer is here? Do we have enough? Is it good evidence? Again, do we need to keep doing more research? And again, if you have to convince others of these findings, sometimes we have a personal stake in that, and we're forced to think a little bit more critically because we don't want to be seen as foolish. So sometimes that often helps, and that's, again, why you have a number of classes that are going to focus on writing and public speaking and these types of skills while you're in college. As you use your critical thinking, you'll start to draw conclusions. So you're going to want to think about some different viewpoints and then, again, reach your own conclusions based on those. That might involve crafting a new idea based on everything that you've learned. Or say, you know what, I've got this information, I've got this research, I've got this evidence, and now I have to make a decision based on that. As you learn to research and evaluate sources and credibility of these different sources and authors, but also as you're exposed to a lot of different points of view and see different perspectives, one of the things that you should come to and realize is that it's good to consider multiple points of view. Does that mean you embrace all of them? No. But it is okay to change your mind. In fact, often it's a mark of a very reasonable, educated person to change your mind instead of being narrow-minded and kind of stuck in the same ideas for all of your life. Here's some practical ways to apply your critical thinking skills and, of course, develop them throughout college. One is to take advantage of opportunities to collaborate. Some of us really hate group projects. I was a student who hated group projects, but I do in my own classes in some different scenarios in different classes. I do teach collaboration, not just assign a group project and call it good, but actually teach collaboration principles because it's very important. And many employers really emphasize that college students should come out of their educational experience with the ability to collaborate with teams. And teamwork can improve critical thinking by, again, listening to multiple points of view and solving problems together. Many times, multiple people can generate more ideas and sharpen each other's ideas. And you can do this in person or electronically. Sometimes you can do it formally when you do have a group project, but there are other times where you and some classmates or friends may want to get together and work on things, again, not doing one project for 3 of you, but working at least together and hashing some of these out ideas to help each other out. You're going to hopefully be able to find some experience thinking creatively and being creative. When I inherited this PowerPoint, I go through and I'm kind of overhauling the class this semester. And I inherited some PowerPoints, and the person who taught it before said, think outside the box, which to me is really funny because whenever people are talking about being creative, 9 out of 10 of them say think outside the box, which is at this point a very non-creative thing to say because everybody says it. So the point that I'm going to make here is try to think of new ways of saying things or considering things and new ways of expressing ideas that don't rely on cliches. Truly try to come up with ideas that are outside of the realm of what everybody else is talking about and thinking. And maybe you'll, fail and fall flat on your face, but that will make it all the more valuable a learning experience. Again, creativity often includes asking questions that will lead you to these creative ideas. And of course, problem solving is very important, and that's one of the skills that we try to help you with is how to face challenges and learn to make some decisions and succeed through solving problems and coming to the right, not the right answer, but to a successful conclusion. Another way in which you will develop your critical thinking skills is through research. And as you start to evaluate sources, we've already talked about credibility, but look at the way that they actually present the information. Are they yelling? Are they biased? And in other words, very highly opinionated, especially without really bringing in strong evidence or considering other points of view. In college level writers and research that college level writers should use should not be a lot of yelling, should not be a lot of opinion without weighing both sides and bringing in strong evidence. Other types of people present information, really they're trying to get you to buy something. They're trying to manipulate you. Sometimes that means literally trying to purchase something with money. Sometimes that's just trying to manipulate you into swallowing an idea without really considering it and weighing good evidence. And then you're going to have some sources that they're telling, they've got credible and informative information. And yeah, sometimes some of those are going to be definitely arguing a point. That's a style of writing that we often use. But you're going to look especially for credible and informative information. I love that phrase, informative information, because of course we would hope that information is informative, but hopefully that sticks with you a little bit. Again, as you start researching, you want to start with some questions about what you're trying to find that will lead you to those sources. Make use of your librarians. We have people here on staff that are trained to help you, especially the library director who has a master's degree in helping students research. Take advantage of that. Use the databases, especially things like EBSCOhost, Scale, Cengage, Statista. Those are great sources. If you don't know how to use those, contact me. I'll sit down with you for 20 minutes and we'll go through it. That should be something that you're learning in Writing 1. If not, let me know. We'll go through it and we'll figure out what you need to know. Again, looking at a variety of places, not just sticking with the same old. And again, evaluate for good quality. As you get more experience, you'll learn more about what that means, but a lot of it is the things. One way to really understand your college experience and your critical thinking and the way that you're developing your thinking is through a tool called Bloom's Taxonomy. This is something that your instructors and professors should be using as they construct lessons and as they construct projects and assignments, because this is a way that helps us know how we can measure what you're really learning and how advanced your critical thinking skills are with this. More on this in just a moment. We'll break this down in just a minute, but this is definitely something that you want to think about, and hopefully as you improve as a college student, it will be reflected in your kind of working your way up the scale on Bloom's Taxonomy. So here's what some of these terms mean and the levels that you might work through here. And these are things that you should especially be focusing on in your first year of college as you move forward. I will say, as somebody who studied this a little bit more and looked at what different colleges and universities want, some of these things, especially analyze and apply and evaluate and create. Some of these top tier things in the upper half of this, these are things that you're probably going to struggle with to some degree in your first year, and oftentimes you're going to do this to a very limited degree, if at all, in some of your courses. As you move through and toward the end of your first year especially, then getting into your second year, starting to solidify some of these so that as you get into your third and fourth year, you should be able to do those things on the top four especially in a stronger and stronger way. So let's talk about what these are. Starting at the bottom, there's a basic level of just being able to recall ideas and information. Remember. So if you can remember things, we talk about it in class. Remember, we're going to give you a very basic test or quiz on if you can remember things. The next level up is to be able to understand. There are a lot of different ways to measure this. One of the main ways is being able to not just identify something and remember what something means, but to be able to actually restate it in your own words. And sort of an upper level of this is to explain it to somebody who wouldn't understand it otherwise. So not just memorize it enough that you can say it in your own words and say the right things, but to actually apply it be able to explain it to somebody else. Once we get into the application, that's where we're really moving into more of the college level things that are really going to set you apart from some of your training that you may have had in high school. This is where you're going to apply abstract and theoretical information to practical situations. So for example, if you are in a behavioral science, like a psychology type class or a sociology type class, I teach literature, we get into this with literature. Even in writing one, for some of our classes, we start getting into this, where you can take theories that people have come up with, or more abstract information, and you can then look at a real life practical situation and apply these theories and ideas to help better understand and explain and improve sometimes, or at least try to develop better ideas about these practical situations. The next step level then is to analyze. This is where you basically take information, break it into parts, and figure out how it's built. Talking about structure, talking about how the logic of things works, how they all fit together, really what critical thinking was used to come up with this idea. That's a pretty heavy, and that will then help you be able to evaluate, which is to make judgments and decisions as you encounter new information. To some extent, yeah, we're asking you to do these on a very limited level within your first year, but some of you are jumping more deeply into this even already probably. The last thing is then to combine concepts and theories to form new, unique ideas. That's the create level. So at this level, again, you've studied so much, you've researched so much, you've learned so much that you were able to come up with some of your own ideas based on this research and your own studies and research. And again, for some students, this doesn't even really click until maybe your senior level. But some of you are, again, doing this on a limited amount. You're doing this in your freshman level, and then you'll be able to see yourself grow and develop and do this. As you move along in your college career, you'll start needing to look at writing or giving oral presentations in a way that's considered a little bit more argumentative. And again, this is something that should be covered in your Writing 1 class at some point. But when we talk about argue, we don't mean getting into a yelling match with people. What we mean is you make a calm, reasonable effort, and you are trying to persuade someone of your claim, of your thesis. And an argument could be a scholarly article. Scholarly articles often are and should be considered arguments. But even a business memo saying, hey, this is what we need to do. I teach a class called Technical Writing, and this is one of the things we focus on, is being able to write business memos and business reports that are trying to be persuasive. And that may include requests for spending money. So again, a lot of us tend to think of argument or these things as a very, I got to do this for my writing class, but I don't know how this applies to real life. Many of us in our employment and in our jobs and our careers are going to be asked to research information, use our own brains, use our critical thinking, and then argue for something that we think needs to be the case. And that includes having a claim, having reasons to support it, and then using evidence to support those claims. That's what we mean by. As we do our research, we need to know how to examine evidence. So of course, this is learning a little bit more about logical reasoning and critical thinking itself, and say, listen, are they using logic, or are they primarily just trying to get us all worked up with our emotions, or appeal to our fear, or make us really sad and easily manipulated? Oftentimes, as we read articles or come up against other things, we need to think, can I think of any counter arguments? Maybe I don't even agree with this counter argument, but how can I challenge what I'm reading, even if I agree with what I'm reading? And again, coming back and saying, what do I know about the person or organization that's making this argument? Oftentimes, we are kind of bamboozled by people who have a very specific agenda that's going to benefit themselves. And they may kind of mask that. They may kind of set up these sort of think tanks or whatever, or research organizations, and come up with fancy names. But ultimately, they're trying to serve their own purpose and persuade something of someone that's going to end up with money in their pocket or give them more power. And we need to be able to identify that as much as possible and just know getting into it what the person's reasons for wanting this are. And of course, trying to establish if they are credible. Time to review the chapter. Thinking in college, especially, is going to involve thinking critically. And you need to understand what that means. That includes challenging your own and others' assumptions, especially things that aren't supported by evidence or don't include all of the evidence. You want to be able to look at multiple points of view and be open-minded, and then that'll help you lead to draw your own conclusions. And not just that, but explain to others what evidence you considered that led you to these positions. That's going to be a key thing for your college work from here on out. And also learn to identify false claims in commercials and political arguments. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a good day.